Spider-Man Far From Home is now out in the wild, meaning that the second entry of the Marvel Cinematic Universe version of the wall crawler is able to be consumed with our eyeballs. And it brought with it a lot of potentially huge things that could impact the entire MCU going forward. And of course, things that could have a massive effect on a third film in the Webhead solo film trilogy. You know, stuff that we're going to talk about that'll probably spoil the snot out of Far From Home. So don't watch any further until you've seen it. But what kind of stuff are we talking about exactly? Be it the possibility of Mysterio popping up again and joining up with a team of other villains to become the Sinister Six, or possibly the introduction of an even greater, possibly cosmic threat. Stick around and we'll let you know how we think the third film in the Spider-Man trilogy is going to go down. So when you're thinking about the future of Spider-Man, it would probably be best to think about the future of the MCU as a whole, especially considering that Peter Parker is being set up to take over for Tony Stark as the sort of de facto face of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. So basically, the MCU's future is pretty closely tied in with Spider-Man's, and things after Far From Home are looking pretty flippin' rocky. So let's start this theory train off properly by taking a look at the post-credits scene from Far From Home. And yeah, we know that was the last thing that you see in the movie, and there was plenty of other stuff before that we could, and are definitely going to, look at for inspiration, but we're gonna start things off here on a macro scale and work our way down to the micro. Cool? Cool. So the post-credit scene, in case you didn't see it, in which case, why are you still here? Go check it out. It revealed to us that Nick Fury and Maria Hill had actually been Skrull agents throughout the entire film, specifically Talos and his wife Soren, who we were introduced to in Captain Marvel. Now, upon seeing this, most people probably immediately started screaming internally, "Holy spimoli!" Now, just reel that excitement back just a little bit, as shortly before this big reveal, we figured out that Talos is actually debriefing someone, who it turns out is actually the real Nick Fury, who's kind of relaxing on a beach somewhere. Except, surprise, it's not a real beach and he is totally in space on board some sort of massive vessel. A lot of people watching this were probably confused by what exactly was happening here. Why the heck is Nick Fury in space? Since when did he get a sweet spaceship in the first place? Has he been up there for a while? Was the Earthbound Fury always a Skrull? As far as whether or not Fury was always a Skrull, gonna say no to that. If you were paying attention during the film, Fury wasn't exactly acting like himself, making a lot of borderline irresponsible choices, and even allowing himself to get tricked by Mysterio in the first place, which is not something that the real Fury would likely do. I mean, Quentin Beck is a pretty smart dude and super handy with illusions, but this is Nick freaking Fury we're talking about right here. The absolutely best spy to have ever spied. We sort of doubt that he would be very easily fooled. Now, about the spaceship and the whole being in space surrounded by Skrulls thing, if we had to guess, that could be the beginning of the MCU version of the Sentient World Observation and Response Department, aka SWORD, which is kind of like the intergalactic arm of S.H.I.E.L.D. Basically, their Space Force. Yeah. Let's go with that. So, okay, let's just go ahead and say that is supposed to be SWORD, just for the sake of this discussion. That would probably mean that the future of the MCU will continue to focus on threats from beyond the stars, perhaps leading to the introduction of Galactus, who is arguably the most logical big bad after Thanos. Wouldn't really make a lot of sense to go with a smaller threat. Always gotta be ramping things up, going bigger and bigger. Now, where exactly does Spider-Man come in here? You know, the focus of this video. Well, Spider-Man has always been a hero of two worlds in the comics. He is most known as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, focusing heavily on street-level heroism. And something that's been a major theme throughout both Homecoming and Far From Home was the web-slinger struggling to accept his role as an Avenger, feeling that he belongs on the ground, taking care of the little guy as opposed to facing cosmic threats. However, in the comics, Spider-Man is also commonly seen fighting alongside his fellow Avengers, against some of the biggest and baddest enemies Marvel can bring to the table. And since the MCU trilogies have so far done a pretty good job of focusing on some major character arcs, like Tony going from a self-centered rich boy to someone who opens up completely and allows himself to let others help him, it is likely that the third Spider-Man film may see the wall crawler go from being too scared to properly jump in the deep end, as it were, to taking his place as one of the foremost defenders of Earth. But before we can get there, there is one major issue sort of kind of blocking his path. that being J. Jonah Jameson and the allegations of an allegedly dead Mysterio. During the mid-credits scene, we see perhaps the biggest shocker of the entire film, as J. Jonah Jameson, played once again to perfection by J.K. Simmons, this time as an InfoWars-esque conspiracy theory spouting online personality working on thedailybugle.net. Jameson popped up on a big screen in the middle of New York City and revealed a video clip that was sent to him by some of Mysterio's people, showing a heavily edited clip of Spider-Man apparently ordering the drones to murder a bunch of people, which was obviously not actually what happened, but Mysterio and his team are pretty solid at video editing and just generally making things look however they like, so it's a pretty convincing piece. And the cherry on top is that the clip also revealed to the entire world that Spider-Man is in fact Peter Parker. So the whole scene is kind of like the ending of Homecoming when May caught Parker unmasking and found out that he was Spider-Man, only on a much more global scale. So the MCU Spider-Man 3 is definitely going to have to deal with the fallout from this event, especially since Parker won't really be able to hide behind his former anonymity. And there really wasn't anyone around during his fight with Mysterio who could back him up on this whole he didn't murder people thing. Sure, there were people who knew that Mysterio wasn't actually a multiverse hopping superhero who died facing off against the monsters that destroyed his world and was in reality a lying liar face who lies, but that number is pretty small. Not to mention that two of them, Nick Fury and Maria Hill, are not currently on Earth, and their Skrull counterparts are probably not super pumped about the idea of coming forward into the public eye. We're still not 100% sure that humanity is ready to really know about aliens that can take on the identity of literally anyone anytime that they wish. Imagine the kind of paranoia that knowledge would bring about. It would be like the Salem witch trials on a much grander scale. So naturally, something pretty major is going to happen in Spider-Man 3, and it is possible that the comics might actually give us a hint at what we could expect. Spoiler alert, you're probably not really gonna like the solution that the comics give us, but let's look at it just cause, you know, fun and stuff. After revealing his identity during the Civil War story arc, Parker wound up facing quite a few consequences. The biggest of which being the shooting of Aunt May, because, you know, that's the whole point of the secret identity, to protect his loved ones from retribution from his enemies. Now, to save May's life, Parker winds up making a deal with the demon Mephisto, agreeing to trade his marriage to Mary Jane in order to save May's life. Yeah, I'm talking about One More Day, one of the most maligned story arcs in comic history. A storyline that is often held up as perhaps the worst storyline in comics history. So, you know, maybe not the best place to draw inspiration from, but it's there. The results of One More Day include May having never been shot, Parker and MJ having never been wed, and of course the knowledge of Parker's identity being erased from the world's collective memories. Kinda doubt that they'll go this route though, because honestly, One More Day is just a bit trash and isn't exactly well thought of by fans. No, we think the solution to the entire problem will come from Mysterio himself. You see, Mysterio is a master of illusions, so it is reasonable to assume that he could have somewhat easily faked his own death at the end of Far From Home. While yes, Edith said that all of his illusions were shut off, it doesn't take fancy holograms to look dead. Anyways, it is possible that Mysterio could be hanging around, plotting some way of getting revenge on the webhead, which is where the Sinister Six could come into the picture. Considering that Spider-Man has only had 2 solo films within the MCU so far, we've already been introduced to quite a few members of Spider-Man's rogues gallery. Vulture was of course the main villain of Homecoming, but that film also gave us Mac Gargan, aka Scorpion, and not one, but 2 different Shockers. Heck, we even saw the Tinkerer and the Prowler if you really want to dig deep into that movie. And now that Far From Home has given us Mysterio, that's quite the roster of villains who could spell trouble for Spider-Man. Now yes, while the Sinister Six roster in the comics is quite different from what we've seen on the screen so far, there is nothing that says Marvel couldn't do things differently in the movies than they did on the page. So ponder this for a second. What if in the 3rd Spider-Man film, Mysterio is revealed to still be alive, and he has aligned himself with a coalition of other villains, all of whom seek the untimely end of the Wallcrawler? Possibly a team led by arguably the most well-known Spider-Man foe, the Green Goblin, who could serve as the film's main baddie. We've yet to get any concrete hint at Norman Osborn existing within the MCU at this point, but with Tony Stark no longer around, another major corporation could could step up to fill the void left by him. Oscorp, for example. Plus, with Sony putting out films in their Spider-Man-less Spider-Verse series such as Venom, the villain possibilities are just a little bit limited. And with Mysterio revealed to be alive in this case, it would only be a matter of time before someone figures out how much of a flippin' liar he is, probably leading to Spider-Man being cleared of all accusations. Now, this isn't all 100% likely, not totally at least, but it would be just a little bit better than a film version of One More Day, so be thankful for that. This is just our thoughts on how the third Spider-Man film may go. How do you think the trilogy will come to a close? Do you think that maybe they'll break the trend and put out a fourth film? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below, and while you're down there, why not hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more awesome videos just like this in your feed each and every day. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you at the movies.